Your thoughts this morning, these separate incidents which seem to be linked by this car app where you can hire a car, two very distinct incidents, one in New Orleans, of course we now know 15 dead there, but also the explosion of the Cybertruck. It's too early to say whether the shooting in New York is related to this, but I think the Mirror has the right headline, America under attack. This is a new year, a time of optimism, of hope, of resolution, where people are hoping the world becomes a safer place, which doesn't seem to be the case.
Well, my response to all these events is to wait and to discover much more about them than we could possibly know at this stage. To rule nothing out. Of course, it is perfectly possible the events are linked and that there is some terrorist element, but it's also possible that they're not, and that there might be some other reason involved. I am very reluctant to get involved in any speculation about what this is about until we know a great deal more about the perpetrators and about the background, and I would advise other people to do the same thing. Beyond that, obviously, these events are absolutely horrifying for those involved in them. The descriptions that one hears of the people screaming in the street in New Orleans are freeze the marrow, and the idea that anyone could behave like this is horrifying. But on the other hand, the point that one must make is that incidents of this kind, sometimes involving guns, sometimes involving the use of motor vehicles, have been on the increase throughout the advanced world really since the 1960s. Some of them are more reported than others because they catch the eye more. I think most people are possibly unaware that in November, in a large city in China, 35 people were killed by somebody who went crazy with a motor vehicle. We know almost nothing about the nature of that. So, as I say, I would just urge people to reserve judgment on what the cause is until we know a great deal more, because I think that's almost always wise. If you don't take care to find out what the real cause is, then you won't be able to take effective action to prevent it from happening in future, which I think must be our main objective when we see these things happen.
I mean, it is extraordinary when you see that video of Jabbar. He seems the least likely person to drive a vehicle into a crowd trying to kill and maim as many people as possible. He was born in Texas, served in the US military.
Yeah, Beaumont, yeah, a place I've been to. I don't, it is very puzzling. He doesn't look or sound like such a person, and one has to ask what will have happened to him between the two events. But again, as I say, there's an awful lot of investigation to be done here, and there are an awful lot of people to do it if they want to do it. And I would very much recommend that, while giving all our sympathy to the bereaved, and indeed all our sympathy to the United States in the general loss, we don't rush to any kind of judgment, because rushing to judgment will often get you the wrong answer.
And of course, we've heard from President Biden, of course, President Trump, or elect Trump, who takes office in just 18 days' time, has issued a statement saying, this is Biden's parting gift to America, migrant terrorists. Well, of course, he's not a migrant. He was born and raised in the US.
I think there was some speculation early on that the perpetrator, or the vehicle at least, had come across the border, which has now turned out to be completely untrue. And this is an example of how you can get things wrong in the early hours of these events. I suspect that Mr. Trump regrets saying that now, so let's hope so. But again, it's an example of how you can get it wrong if you rush to judgment. So don't do that.
So can we just focus on matters domestic? Of course, immigration is the #1 priority for the electorate. We know that. Immigration, economy, the NHS, in that order. And now we've heard from the Labour government, as you know, which has failed to get on top of the immigration crisis. And they have said that anyone suspected of being involved in people smuggling or other serious crime will face bans on travel, the internet and the mobile phone. They say this is a huge expansion of court orders. It will crack down on the small boat crossings. Do you buy that?
Well, it gives the illusion of action, and of course it comes from a Prime Minister whose main background is in prosecuting, whose response to almost any problem in the country is to prosecute it. And these are perfectly reasonable things to do to people if you've convicted them of people smuggling, and I'm not against them, but the idea that they're going to prevent it is, it seems to me to be a stretch. And nobody has really worked out a way to prevent it, because the international legal system under which we must all operate, and under which major democratic countries are forced to operate, makes it very, very difficult to take effective action against illegal mass migration of this kind. And until the major countries of the world set about dealing with that, then it will remain so. And half the problem is that what I've called for many, many years the liberal elite in the Western countries has been against taking such action, and so has left discussion on this to quite a small zone of politics, which it then dismisses as far right. To me, the most interesting development of the past year has been in Germany, and the rise, not as fast as perhaps it should have been, but certainly interesting, of a politician called Sarah Wagenknecht, who is of the left, and who has turned to all her friends on the left and said, you must stop saying that everybody who's against immigration in Germany is a Nazi. They're not against immigration because they're Nazis. They're against immigration because they're cheesed off. And we must treat their concerns seriously. And until people such as Sir Keir Starmer on the left in this country, and his equivalents all across Europe, understand that it is because they're cheesed off that people are against this, and it's perfectly reasonable to defend your own borders. And indeed, it's a good, actually a perfectly good liberal policy if you think about it. Until they all get together to change the ridiculous refugee laws and the ridiculous international laws which prevent firm action being taken against us, nothing will happen. And so when you see these measures that we were mentioning earlier on, they are, as I say, there's nothing wrong with them in themselves, but they won't change anything. It really is necessary for people such as Sir Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper to reevaluate their entire attitude towards mass migration. It's not a wholly right-wing concern. It should be the concern of the left.
When you look at the numbers, 36,818 migrants in 2024, the second highest year since records began in 2018, more than 150,000 illegal migrants coming to this country. That is a town the size of, say, Cambridge or Ipswich or Blackpool. People, as you rightly say, have had enough of this. They want the government to take action. They saw no action under the Conservatives, but in some ways, at least there was a deterrent on the table with the Rwanda scheme. Now, Starmer comes in, he gets rid of that. He says, right, we're going to have a big border security command, but I'm going to bring all the agencies together. No one sees any evidence that that has done any good whatsoever. Do you honestly think, and do you have faith, that Labour will get on top of this immigration crisis and actually secure British borders?
Well, no, I don't, and I think this is one of the problems of modern politics, that the parties of the left are so obdurate about this. The cancellation of the Rwanda scheme was a grave mistake. I'm not sure. I was very sceptical about the Rwanda scheme when it was first put forward, but there was clear evidence, particularly among migrants in Ireland, and their decision to stay away from Britain. There was clear evidence that it was beginning to have the intended effect of making people wonder whether it was worthwhile coming here. And I think it was a stupid mistake to cancel it until it had been given a chance to either work or not work. And I just thought that was petty and typical of an incoming government which doesn't really have any new ideas, and is in fact in the group of people of the Euro-communist left, and has been for many years. If the left will not take this on, then the left will ultimately be responsible for the political consequences, which are already visibly developing across the whole of Europe and will continue to develop in this country. I don't think that's intelligent of them, and it seems to me it's worth arguing very clearly. I've come obviously from the socially, morally and politically conservative right, but I think that unless and until we can persuade the leaders of the political left, the leaders of the media left, to understand that this isn't just a problem for fascists and Nazis and bigots. Absolutely not. That it's perfectly reasonable for ordinary people to be distressed about the complete loss of control of national borders. The figures you mentioned, the numbers of people coming into this country legally and illegally, which the lobby Migration Watch have been pointing out for decades now, and saying this is this is going to cause immense stress on the country. These are extraordinary, and they're probably the biggest issue which has come before this country in decades, and nobody will talk about it in any way suggesting that it will ever come to an end. So yeah, I think we are at a very serious stage. If the dominant political parties and forces in our country, and its politics, its legal system, its education system, and its media won't wake up to this, then I'm afraid they are storing up the grapes of wrath.
Peter, always good to talk to you. Happy New Year to you. Peter Hitchens, their columnist at The Mail on a Sunday.